Let's get right on into our program. This is our second certification session. You will be scanned on the way out, I believe, after this. Our head lobbyist, if you will, up here are Jack Critcher. Jack is legislative liaison. John Wilkerson is our general counsel. Lanny Richmond's our code and legal counsel. And of course, our number one lawyer is our executive director, Mark Hayes. I had a front row seat to the legislative session and watched these guys work, and they did us a wonderful job, I'm telling you, over the top. So with that, we're going to have Jack come up first. Jack Critcher.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank all of you for being here today. If you look on the screen up here, it says best session in recent memory. I've been around, when you say best session, we were talking about that earlier out in the hallway there. It had its moments. Bill Burrow and others can attest to that. But what we're talking about is, monetarily speaking, it was the best session in recent memory. And I have been around a lot of them, 25 or 30 or so. And the reason I say that is, number one, look up there and you see Act 822. Well, the marketplace fairness or online sales tax or whatever you want to call it, we've been battling that for longer than any of us could care to remember, but this year it passed. And by the way, are there any legislators out there in the audience? They may still be down. I don't see any. We just came from city and county. There were 32 or 3 or 4 that we counted, and that's pretty amazing, because usually if you have 10 or 12 show up, that's about normal. So there's a tremendous turnout of legislators here. We appreciate that, and we really appreciate them getting marketplace fairness or online sales tax passed this session. Now, if you look, it says $12 million in new money, and the question mark. Well, I can tell you that figure it's higher than that. That's low. It's going to be higher than $12 million. In fact, it's going to be much higher than $12 million. How much higher? Well, probably around $20 million. And I'm basing that on several things. Lots of conversations with several key legislative leaders and who have looked at the budget, looked at history, and looked at the trend. And we think that $20 million is going to be closer to being accurate than $12 million. But anyway, that's brand new money. Much needed money to bring about fairness and level the playing field with our retailers. So that was a huge win for cities and towns. Now, this is the one that I'm really excited about. If you look at that Act 416, that's highways, streets, and bridges. The reason I'm excited about this, in the past, going back to 95, every time we would pass a road program, it was a road program, or a highway program. Roads, highways, roads, highways. Well, when you think about highways, you don't really think about cities or towns. You think about, interstates or state highways out in the hinterlands or whatever. But when you hear the word streets, what do you think of? You think of cities. So there were a couple of groups, the Good Roads program, the Good Roads group that met periodically and has been in existence for a long time, fighting for a road program. And then the group that was meeting this year, Joe Quinn's group, did a great job. But Mark Hayes, the first meeting, or maybe the second, I don't know when it was, one of the initial meetings, Mark said, in order to push a road program, you got to get the cities involved, and we want to make sure that everyone understands that cities have to be part of the equation, and streets city streets are in need of repair, need of new money, need of money for maintenance. And so in the title, we don't want a road program, we don't want a highway program, we want a highway streets. And of course, the county said that's a great idea, let's throw bridges in there too, because when you think of bridges, you think of counties. But so anyway, the title is actually, we made sure that streets and bridges were included in that. And that was Mark's idea, and it was a great idea, and I think it did a lot to unify the cities and the counties, and not only helped pass that program, but it really engaged both sides, and it protected, most importantly, I think it did more than anything to protect the 70-15-15 split. So anyway, that was a huge win right there. How much is it going to generate? Somewhere between $13 to $14 million. And again, that's all new money. So you add the 20 million up, and now the 13 to 14 million. Now here's the third leg of the three-legged stool for highways, streets, and bridges. If you remember when the half-cent sales tax was passed, every one of you see that each month. You know how much that's been producing, how important, how vital that is to cities and towns. Well, it's going to expire in 2023, but thankfully the governor and the legislature referred that to the ballot. It'll be on the ballot November 20, but we're going to have to pass that. It'll only remain in effect if the voters approve it. So cannot stress how important it is that we pass this, and we'll be talking about that from now on to 2020, coming up to November. But that one is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $35 to $40 million, because we know that's going to grow. That's the trend. It's been the trend forever, and it's going to continue. But that is the crucial third leg of the three-legged stool. So in summary, it was a very productive session. If you add those three up, you're looking at $60 to $74 million. And any way you look at it, that's real money, real dollars, much needed. And so from that point, that standpoint, it was a very productive session. Now, here's a very important point. Your voice, I cannot stress this enough, your voice is the most important voice when it comes to your legislator. Your opinion is the one that matters the most. I mean, I can go over there, and Mark can go over there, and Mayor Smith or whoever. Mayor Smith can convince his legislators, but the person down in El Dorado, probably the legislator down there may or may not put much stock in what Mayor Smith thinks. These two guys down here on the end, if they can convince their legislator, but the voice that matters most to the senators and the representatives are you. They want to know what their mayor, their council member, their clerk, their treasurer, when you let them know how you feel, trust me, it means so much, because it's not only your voice, but they know you have a much larger realm of influence than Joe Sixpack, and it carries a ton of weight. Cannot stress that enough, how important it is. With that, just want to say thanks so much to each of you and John will probably mention more about this, but several of you out there, and I see several of you who were really engaged this past session with your legislators, and engaged out there, and it made a ton of difference, I can assure you. So with that, I want to thank all of you for what you do, and I will turn it over to Mr. President.
Thank you, Jack. When we were working the session, we told the governor that next year, when they bring that half penny to be extended permanently, that we would all rally around him and make that happen. So we made that commitment for you, so hopefully you'll like our commitment on your behalf. But next year when we start campaigning for that, we really need all of us to kick in, because you saw how much money that means, and it goes into all of our pockets. So I do appreciate that. Next we've got John Wilkerson, General Counsel. John.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Everybody doing all right so far? All right. So I have the dubious honor to talk about some of the not so great things that happened to the session. So Jack left that to me. I appreciate that. Thank you, Jack. It was a fantastic session, and what I'm going to talk about are some things that we're going to learn to live with. We can make the best out of it, but not all sunshine and roses all the time at the session. So start off here with Senate Bill 170. It's the design restriction bill that some of you may know about. I know Fayetteville knows about this pretty well. I dealt with this bill for about 3 solid weeks, and my joke became, my gravestone's going to read, John Wilkerson, born June 16th, 1979, died, Senate Bill 170. It was a very difficult bill. So, but what that bill does is it limits the municipality from regulating residential building design elements. Essentially, what it does is the city cannot say that certain areas of town cannot be purple, or you have to have a certain type of siding in certain areas. The ornaments have to be a certain way. Garages have to be placed at a certain angle. Cities can't regulate the number of rooms, or the types of rooms, or the minimum square footage in places around the city. Now, as a whole, that sounds like a pretty bad affront to local control, taking away a lot of our local control. But we worked for, like I said, 3 or 4 weeks with the legislator, Senator Hester, and the builders who were behind the bill, and worked with them, and they were very receptive to our ideas, and thankfully we came to a compromise on a lot of these issues. And I'll say the truth of the bill lies in the exceptions. So when you go back to your cities, or if your planner is here, go talk to your planner about, and the city attorney about some of these things. But essentially the exceptions are, I think there's 13 total. So a city is not allowed to regulate the color as a whole, but in historic districts it's okay. If the citizens group together and say, we as a neighborhood are not going to allow purple houses, that's okay. The city can contract with city residents and say, residents, do you agree that you don't want purple houses? We'll agree with you that you won't have purple houses in your city. Building and safety codes are not affected. So if you need to have a design element because of a building or safety code, you can do that. Manufactured housing regs are not touched. So anything that you can do with manufactured housing, which is not a lot, by the way, that's not affected. Flood insurance programs, not affected. If you have a central business improvement district, you can regulate design in the central business improvement district. It only applies to single-family dwellings, so you can still place design restrictions on multifamily dwellings like duplexes or apartment complexes. Any regulation that you have in place before February 28th of 2019, you get to keep. In urban service districts, if you have an urban service district, you see where I'm going. There's a lot of exceptions here that we can work with. If there's a health hazard that a design restriction is somehow important to protect, that's okay. The big one I will notice is the overlay districts. Overlay districts, and your city attorneys and your planners know quite a bit about this, are something that we've created where we place design restrictions or zoning restrictions on one particular area without necessarily rezoning. We just create this overlay district. Now Fayetteville knows about this, Springdale too, I think. That's okay too, if you can get a majority of the property owners in that area to agree with you. So citizen interaction can help you place design restrictions on certain parts of town. So it's a bill that it does take away local control. But we worked very hard with the legislator, and he listened to you all about the problems with the bill as it was drafted, and now we've come up with these 13 exceptions. So don't fret, it'll be okay. But with that said, we're not really sure how it's all going to work. A lot of this stuff is kind of nuanced and new stuff. So as you go through this the next 2 years, let us know your stories, because it helps us know the ins and outs and the way this bill is going to actually work. And if the impact is overly burdensome, we can always try to amend in 2021. And the legislator has told us he will work with us. If it becomes, sky is falling, he will work with us in 2021 to amend it if need be. So please tell us your stories about how this would affect you. All right. By the way, is there any representatives that made their way in here? Representatives or senators? I'll give a shout out because it was a good session. I do want to give a round of applause if they're in here. But another one that wasn't all, like I said, sunshine and roses is House Bill 1928 by Representative Vivian Flowers. On its face, it's good because it's promoting transparency. But what this bill does is it requires all public meetings to be recorded. And you have to keep that recording on some medium that you can easily give over if somebody FOIs you. And it has to be kept for a year. It does not apply to executive sessions, and it does not apply to volunteer fire departments. The question is going to be, what is a meeting? And here's our advice. If you get together to do anything, that's a meeting, and you need to record it. So if it's a planning commission, and you have 2 city council members on it, or the
Planning Commission itself.
Planning Commission itself, actually, yeah, you're right. Parks Commission, City Council meeting, of course, a Public Safety Commission, whatever you have that is a governing body, it needs to be recorded and you need to keep it. Keep the recording handy. So, by the way, for second-class cities and incorporated towns, this does not kick in until July 2020. So, all right. The other big one is Representative Clowney's Crump's Law, the law concerning paid leave for firefighters with occupationally caused cancer. So a firefighter who is exposed to known carcinogens, and how we know this, we're not exactly sure how this is all going to work. And if they're diagnosed with, quote, certain types, well, I quoted certain types, but I do that for a reason, with certain types of cancer, they receive basically 6 months of leave in addition to their accrued sick leave. So if they get all of their sick, if they have cancer, it's going to be presumed to be caused by their firefighting duties, and they're going to get 6 months of additional time off after their sick leave and vacation leave has all been exhausted. So the presumption is there that the cancer was caused by firefighting activities, but the city can disprove that. We're not exactly sure how this is going to work. It's going to involve litigation, I would assume, at some point. But the firefighters and the representative and senator who are behind this responded to my point, which was if Captain whoever has been a smoker for 35 years and then gets cancer, is the cancer caused by the smoking or is the cancer caused by the firefighting? And they assured me that's not what they're trying to protect. They're trying to protect those that are firefighters that are otherwise healthy, otherwise not been exposed to carcinogens, and then get cancer. But the city has the burden to disprove it. Again, I'm not sure how this is going to work, but there is a bill that called the Firefighter Cancer Relief Network that was passed. Again, not really sure how this is going to work, but even more so than Senate Bill 170, we need your input on how this plays out in your town. We have ideas that we can make this work. We're optimistic that we can make this work because fundamentally we want to protect firefighters who get cancer because they're doing our work. I mean, doing out there fighting fires and putting their lives in line. But we can't break the bank necessarily, so we have to figure out a way to manage all this. And again, the firefighters and the representatives and senator have told me that they will work with us if we find how this is really going to work. And if it becomes too burdensome, we can always try to amend in 2021. But we need to know the problems that you face. I want to piggyback off of something Jack said and tell a story about this particular bill. The degree of success, as Jack said, is for us is equal to the degree in which you are engaged. And the firefighter bill was really important. A really good story about this because I remember for the week that it was really happening, the firefighter bill is really coming down, and we're expressing our ideas and the reasons we have, reasons that we don't think it'll work. I remember being in the Capitol Rotunda, flanked by 6 firefighters and a representative, all peppering me with questions. Now, they're very polite, but they're also this is a very emotional topic for them. And I was trying to explain our position, why this, why that, and it was just certainly wasn't, they weren't ganging up on me, except I guess they kind of were, but they were nice about it. And I remember the bill passed that next day out of the House, and it went to the Senate the next week. The next week, it wasn't just me. It was Mayor Milligan, Mayor Dixon, Mayor Kirby, Mayor Bowen, Mayor Smith, Mayor Hines. Then all of a sudden, it was those firefighters versus us. And that's when they thought, oh, I get it now. And that's when the senator brought us to a separate room and said, okay, now we get it. I get that you're upset because we had 6 mayors standing behind me and Jack really dealing with this. And they sat down, and the senator sat down with us and said, okay, I get it. He made some amendments. He assured us that his intent was not to bankrupt the city, which obviously it wasn't. But that was a huge turning point in that particular bill. Now, it passed anyway, but it shows you the power that mayors and city council members and clerks and everybody has up at the session. This keeps going for some reason, but so again, thank you, Mayor Smith, for being there. That was fantastic. One more thing, I'm sorry. So I do have some good news, though, all right? Going to Jack's point. There's a Supreme Court case that was ruled on 2 years ago, I think, that said second-class cities and incorporated towns do not have the power to regulate building, to enforce building codes. Basically, there's no way to stop a tar paper shack from going up next to the city hall. And Representative Bruce Coleman from Elkins, if anybody's from Elkins or that area, give him a hug, give him a pat on the back. He fought for us on this issue, and now, like first-class cities, second-class cities, and incorporated towns have the power to enforce their building regulations and make their city beautiful, make their town beautiful, and not have tar paper shacks everywhere. So thank you, Bruce Coleman. We actually had a governor's signing with the governor on this one. This is how important it was to all of us. Huge win for us. And finally, last but not least, I want to thank Chief Wilson. I think I saw him out of Hope. Thank Hope for this one. For criminal investigations, for undercover, or not undercover, but criminal informants, if I want to rat on Jack over here anonymously, and then he gets out of prison, he can FOI, before this bill, he could have FOI'd the city and found out that I'm the guy that ratted on him, and it would have been perfectly fine. With this bill, thank you to Chief Wilson and to Representative Watson, now my identity, when I do rat on Jack, will forever be protected. Right. I won't rat on Jack, obviously. I want to, just real quick, personal privilege, I do want to say thank you to all of you for letting me work for you, and how it's really been an honor working for the cities and towns of Arkansas. I love government. I love city government because it's where the rubber meets the road. And Sheila was fantastic working with Sheila on all those things that we send out to you, and the notices that's going on. Lanny was fantastic. Jack is my Yoda. But Mark Hayes has, been a fantastic leader for us this whole session. And like I told you, winter conference, it is honesty, forthright. That is what we live by, and that's what Mark has taught us, and it has served us absolutely well. So thank you all very much for having me, and I look forward to doing good work for you.
Things got a little testy over there at the Capitol every once in a while. Then, you get time to reflect after the session's over. And I really got to look back and figure out that I was the sacrificial lamb for these guys. The Senate Bill the losers, the Senate Bill 170, Crump's Law with the firemen. I was the one that they pushed out in front and said, go ahead and take a beating for us, Smith. And but I'm telling you, is Greg Hines here from Rogers? If Greg will be here, I'm sure. If you get a chance to see him, he defended us with all the passion that you could absolutely do without really getting down into a full-fledged fight. But he was passionate about it, and all the other mayors that were there with us, I do appreciate your support. It did make a difference, absolutely. Before I go on to Lanny, I just glance out here and see my friend, Vice Mayor Fort Smith, Kevin Settle. I want to say to all the cities up and down the Arkansas River that have been fighting this flood, we feel your pain, and we know how devastating it's been on your cities. And so I want to send that out. And I know all of us are saying, God bless you guys, all the way to the Mississippi River, from Fort Smith to the Mississippi River. We all took a pretty big beating. And I know all of us will try to help you. So if y'all need something from other cities that aren't involved in the flood, I'm sure all you got to do is ask, right? Are we hearing that? How about that? So with that, let's hear from Lanny. Lanny?
Now then, before I get started, as John pointed out, we had a great meeting earlier with the legislatures in the building. So if any legislators walked in, has anyone wandered in? Because if so, we'd like to give you a round of applause. I'm not seeing anyone indicate, but we still thank you. If you see them, thank them in the hallways. I'll give 2 anecdotes before I jump into it. First is that, if there was a dire emergency, John would send me to the Capitol. And that if we ran out of bodies, we'd send Lanny to the Capitol. And I would mock him for it because of my second anecdote, which is as a child, I had a speech impediment, couldn't say L's and R's, which you'll notice is pretty difficult when you're named Lanny Richmond. And that's who John sent to the Capitol. No, so not a problem anymore, thankfully. No, and one more, I usually have to follow Mark Hayes when I'm speaking, which is just awful. I follow this great speaker, a robust baritone with my high nasally tenor. Not fair at all. Not fair at all. So thankfully I get to go before him. Exactly. Get some people who understand it. So one of the first ones, and it's near and dear to me, and John worked very hard on this one, is clarifying our codification statutes. So we have these statutes that say, hey, cities, you can create municipal codes. And then there was not really a whole lot to them after that, and the reasoning being, I'm sure they were written in the 1920s, and we go, they'll figure it out in the future. Well, it had become enough of a problem where we knew it was time to clarify what these statutes said and did. And our first one was, we just want to be clear on how we provide notice to the public. We don't have to publish these in newspapers. We're going to publish them by reference, and we're going to have 3 copies in the clerk or recorder's office. Just like all of our other technical codes. This is how we're going to do it. And in part of working on the bill, these statutes had the language revision in it, which is just another way to say codification, which is to say, Missouri has the Missouri statutes revised, and that's what they call it. Well, there were parties who thought, we don't like seeing revision in there. We don't know what that means. Maybe that lets y'all hoodwink us and do some nefarious changes to the code when we're not looking. It didn't do that, but everyone here, we're like, we're fine getting rid of it. It doesn't add anything. But we want to be clear on what we can do. And part of the bill now says that when you're codifying your ordinances going through this, you can treat them like the State Code Commission, where there's certain powers listed. So from my perspective, we traded the word revision in the statute for the power to correct spelling, grammar, typos, references, numbering, renumbering, chapters, sections, subchapters, inaccurate references, name changes, order, alphabetizing, adding hyphens, removing obsolete language, and correcting gender references. So I would say it's a pretty good bill, all things considered, and you can thank John Wilkerson for that one. Not even that impressed with himself. It was his least bill, probably. Very important to us, though. Let me see if I can figure out how to move forward.
Yeah, the right one.
There we go. So very aggressive. Now then, we had a meeting early on, and I think you'll notice a theme throughout this session was trying to work closely, 1, with all of our constituents, and then 2, closer with the counties, because the counties are very closely aligned with us in terms of money, powers. We all kind of look around and want similar things. And at one of our meetings, we go, we noticed that there's some differences in runoff election dates, kind of depending on the positions. And we go, for us, municipal elections is typically 3 weeks. Counties go, ours is 4. And we go, do you think people are doing them at the right time? And everyone's eyes just got wide because everyone knew that there was runoff elections at 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and that they probably weren't matching up perfectly. So we looked at it and we said, we'll clarify. We'll make all the runoff elections 4 weeks, no matter what. Nice and clean for everyone to know what's happening. So we had one that did that for everything, and then at the end we had this one, which was cleaning up the city manager statutes, where theirs was 2 weeks, and I think everyone looked around and said, there's no runoffs happening in 2 weeks. Just whatever that statute says, it's going to take longer than that. So we clarified that, and all of our runoffs are now neatly set at 4 weeks, thankfully. Another big one that's going to have a lot of day-to-day application is Act 799. I hope everyone in here is familiar with the police officer vacation statute. Our statute says, 1452-106 says, hey, police chiefs, you shall arrange for vacation to be taken by your police officers 15 days. And that's pretty much what the statute said, which again is less than helpful because again, it was probably written prior to my birth. So we thought we should clean that up, and that's exactly what we did. It now reads a lot clearer on how everything operates. It's clear that this time it rolls over up to the amount we set by ordinance. So if we would like this to be a benefit that rolls over, we can make it one, but otherwise it isn't. It's paid out, and previously you're probably all thinking, well, Lanny, I've talked to you. We always paid this out because you told me to or I'd get sued. And that's true, but you'd get sued for all these other reasons and not because of the statute telling you so expressly. So now it tells us so that there's no bickering about it, so that we know here's when we pay it out if they've accumulated it and leave our service, just to make it nice and neat. And built into this is that the police chief has some discretion in when we allow vacation. So, if everyone's working on a triple homicide and someone goes, hey, I think I'm going to take my 15 days now, we can go, you can take that next week, which is a great improvement in just clarity on everything we had. Another very beneficial one, which is just great that I come after John, when he has all these negative ones, I just keep saying, hey, we did great. We have all these positive ones for you. We got to put into statute, put into the law that we can accept credit and debit cards. There'd been different factions and people wondering, well, there's no law that says we can do this. I know we have home rule, but what happens if we're charging people a fee that's not authorized? So we go, hey, this is important enough. We're going to make it into a law that cities can accept credit and debit cards and that we can charge a transaction fee to recoup our cost if we have an agreement with the credit card and debit card provider where for each slide it costs this, we can pass that on without problem. You'll notice there's 2 acts up there because after we passed the first one, which was great and clarified everything, legislative audit looked at it and they go, well, currently it looks like you could charge an infinite transaction fee. And we go, well, no city's going to do that. They go, well, would you mind fixing that? We go, we'll put it together. And that's what the second act does. It just says that you can't charge duplicative fees. If we're charging you $1 to repay Visa, we can't charge you 3 $1 charges to repay Visa their $1, which is, I hope, non-controversial. Now then, one of the bigger ones and one of the ones that probably caused everyone a lot of consternation at our office is Act 1075. And this started out, it didn't originate with us, even though we were supportive of the idea. The goal of this act as it originally started was to let cities and counties do public work bid notification. So say we're doing our request for bids because we're about to dig into the street and we need some asphalt. Is to do it all electronically because I'm sure everyone in here knows the cost associated with publishing in a newspaper is pretty high and is always something we have to keep in mind. So naturally, the Press Association fought vehemently against it, and so did quite a few of very concerned citizens and very concerned legislators who said, I don't know if we're ready for this. I don't know if Arkansas is ready to cut out the newspapers out of the publication business. Well, what we want here is for everyone to get notified. We want good public input. We want the best bidding possible. So we'd like to put those things online. And what we eventually came to after quite a bit of stress, work, and pressure onto John Wilkerson was that there'll be a bit of a trial run where if we want to be able to accept electronic bids, so people email us in their bid, because currently we have to take sealed bids under the statute and we have to open them at a certain time and place them in a certain way. So if we want to do electronic bids, we follow this system. And what this system is going to look like is there's going to be 3 online vendors who's going to get to handle all of this. The reason for 3 is because people were concerned that, if we had 500 for all 500 cities, how would anyone ever know where to look? And of course, that's probably the current problem people have with newspapers, but we'll leave that aside. So there's going to be 3 where cities, if you want to accept electronic bids, you can pick one of these 3. And one of these 3 is going to be picked by a board that was created under this law. And this board, if I have my notes, is made up of the state procurement officer or his designee, the Arkansas Municipal League executive director, or his designee, probably.
Have fun, John.
Figure that out. The same thing for the Arkansas Association of Counties and the Arkansas Association of Educational Administrators, and also someone from the Press Association, because they are very involved in this process, or their designee. Or if someone quits, the governor picks someone new. You know, if Mark said, there's 0% chance I'm going and 0% chance I'm letting anyone go, someone new would be added to the board, but I think we'll show up on time.
We will.
John will, at least. So they'll be involved in picking these 3 vendors who will handle this electronic bid notification for us. What we are really hoping is that this gets the ball rolling on moving the bid process forward throughout Arkansas, and that we can be able to show that this process is more effective than putting it in our local newspaper, because it's reaching all across the country. It's reaching anyone with internet, and anyone who wants to be involved in this bid process can get it at a moment's notice. So another plea I'll make to y'all is that if you have any way to count, if you start putting things online as well as in the paper just to get more information, try and keep track of that for us, because that's going to be very important. We want to demonstrate that this is where cities should be going, not because of money, but because this is how we reach the public now. Online and electronically is probably the best way to get the most public involvement throughout our systems. And the way we show that to the legislators, to show, hey guys, this is the best system, is through y'all coming to us and saying, guys, this is the best system. We keep track, and here's what the numbers say. Okay. Now then, the catastrophic leave bill. I believe this was written in about one night by Mark Hayes when he was pressed for time with the proverbial, sword hanging over his head. And he's like, well, I've got to do something. So I'm sure he looked at me, he's like, Laney, are you busy? I'm like, I'm so busy, boss. He goes, okay. And you can tell that it worked out very well in the terms of drafting. What it does, it applies to all cities and towns, everyone. What we can do is now set up catastrophic leave. And again, some of you are probably thinking, well, couldn't we do that already? And there were serious concerns that, especially as it applied to police and fire, we probably couldn't. Because the statutes told us what sick leave police and fire got, how they could use that sick leave, and when they could take it. So we thought, well, might be preempted, so we probably need a bill. And it's optional. So if you look at this bill and you go, oh, well, Lanny, this is awful. Well, this isn't mandatory. This is something, if your city's interested in, take a look at the bill and you can set up a catastrophic leave program. Some of the highlights in it is that when people donate to it, it's going to be irrevocable, so we don't have people putting time in and taking time out to give to other employees, to make it easy to administrate. Like I said, everything's going to be May. It's going to be for full-time employees. It's going to run concurrently with the FMLA. It's basically what you think of when you think of a catastrophic leave bank, where people can put in time for other employees if there's a true emergency and we need to let these people have this additional leave. Again, it's all optional, and the specific ones, if you wanted to take a look at how sick leave for fire and police currently work, that is Arkansas Code 1453-108 for fire and 1452-107 for police. And with that, thank you for your time, and let's hear from Mark Hayes.
I want to encourage all of you on the recording all public meetings. I know it doesn't start till next year, but it'll be here before you know it. So if all the mayors that are here, if you don't have staff with you, write that down, because you're going to have to get special equipment, different kind of recorders. If you put a little old cheap recorder out in the middle of a table and expect that to qualify when you get FOI'd on that, you're probably going to get your hand slapped. So spend a little bit more money so that it's worth. My city clerk, Diane Whitby, is here. You're chairman of our city to make sure that happens, right? Good. Okay, Mark, you have 10 minutes, maybe
10
8.
minutes.
Okay.
Well,
All right.
I can finish up at 12. So first of all, I would like to thank President Smith for enduring the legislative session with us. He was a great help. He was great support at the Capitol, great moral support for us as well. And so I do want you to know that, and we appreciate it. It's also important to note that the first thing that he did was compliment the staff on the work that they did. So I'm just going to tell you, I've done this out at the Capitol now for many years, and the 3 gentlemen up here who are out there each and every day, Jack, John, Lanny, We had a couple more staffers, Whitney, Sheila, a few more, but I want you to understand the real folks with boots on the ground, these guys, they did an incredible job, and sometimes under very, very difficult circumstances, and I'll forever be grateful for them. And John, for your compliments, and Jack, you too. I've got you each a $20 bill. Thank you for mentioning. Lanny, we're going to have to work on your skill set a bit. Now John just made it $50. Thank you. So I want to make 4 quick points. And it's been alluded to a couple of times, both Jack and John said this. There is absolutely no substitute for you having a relationship with your legislator. So here's the acid test. If you don't have their cell phone number, you don't have a relationship with them. I hate to say it, but it's true. The volume of business that's done by text message these days is absolutely incredible. And if you don't have that number, and you're sending emails or even leaving voicemails at the Capitol, it just doesn't have the same impact. So here are my 4 points. First things first, educate yourself. Understand exactly who your persons are, your representative and your senator. Know how to get a hold of them. Know what their politics are. Make sure you understand everything that's occurred in this past legislative session. We've done a big article in City and Town magazine in last month's edition. Take a look at it. Read it very carefully. That'll give you a pretty good rundown about what's occurred. Take a look at voting records. It's all online. It's very easy. All you have to do is get on the legislature's website and take a look. All of the bill voting is right there. You can see who voted yes, who voted no. Make a point to reach out to your legislator now, yesterday in fact. Tell them thank you for their service. If they voted for the things that we really support, make sure they understand just how much you appreciate that. But it needs to go further. You need to make sure that you're educating them about what you do. Invite them to City Hall. Drive them around in your city. Show them your parks. Show them your police cars. Show them the areas that you need assistance with. Show them the things that you're doing well. Educate them about the power of local control. Educate them about why that concept makes so very much sense, and anything to constrain it means city and town government can't function as it should. One size does not fit all in this business. What may work in Lake Village won't work in Briarcliff, or vice versa. You must understand what you're doing and get that information into those people's hands and go over it and over it and over it. They want to hear from you. That's an absolute. So take advantage of that. And the last thing, the 4th thing I want to be very clear about is it has to be a consistent communication. You must talk to them on a consistent basis. Just because the legislature is not currently convened in session does not mean that you should not be in touch with them. They are in committee meetings seemingly every day, is what it feels like. And you need to know that. You need to know what they're doing. But more importantly, the more you communicate with them, the better relationship you will have. And so when the session comes along and you call them and you tell them how you feel about a bill, you will have credibility in that process. And I'm telling you, as good as these guys are up here, we cannot carry that message like you can. You absolutely must do that. So with that, I just want to thank all of you for your hard work during this last session. We appreciate you very much. I don't know if any legislators have walked in. Anybody back there? 1 or 2 of them? No? But there's a goodly contingent here. Thank them. Talk to them. Let them know who you are and what you do. You're the best folks in the business, and I appreciate you very, very much.
Thank you, guys, all of you very much. Let me make a few little, our next meeting is the Resolutions Committee meeting. It's